Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. Today I have Kate Hannon. Kate is here to talk to us about leveling up from middle school math to high school math. And we have several options there for you. And she's got a new one she wants to tell you about that's coming soon. So I'm excited to have you listen to Kate, and she's going to answer a lot of the questions you may have about our resources in middle school and high school, and how, if there have been some questions about moving up, transitioning, she's going to answer those common questions for you. So, hi, Kate. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited for us to have a chance to talk again.
Me too.
So I want you to tell us a little bit about each one of the options that we have from middle school and high school, so that then it'll make sense as we talk about how to transition.
Sure. So in high school, the first 2 years are elementary algebra, which is really algebra 1, even though it's called elementary algebra. It's your algebra 1 course, and Jacobs geometry. And both of those were written by Harold Jacobs. And so those are the first two. And then I wrote a Principles of Algebra 2 course, and I am working on a Principles of Consumer Math course. Hopefully that'll be out next year, I hope. So that will be another option that can be fit in there in high school.
Okay. Well, I'd love for you to tell us about the differences between our junior high math or middle school math and our high school level math classes or courses.
Sure. And I think I'm going to focus on like the difference between the Principles and the Jacobs, because that's where they're two different authors. So there's a little bit more of a difference than when you go back into the Principles courses. But one of the things that I like about Jacobs is he really is trying to show the student how to apply math in new settings. So it's going to stretch their thinking a little bit further. And he often will teach through the problems. So rather than presenting everything so that you can just follow it step by step in a problem, he'll give you problems that are purposefully designed to help you learn a concept, which is a little shift in the way you think about as you go through math. But it's really important because as you get into real life scenarios or upper level math or sciences, you're faced with situations that you really have to think through and break apart. And as you learn to discover math that way and you learn to explore problems that way, it's building that thinking. But my encouragement to parents would be, don't expect your child to get every problem right. I think earlier on you expect like they're gonna be able to pass this worksheet and get them all correct if they're doing it. But really in Jacobs, it's designed that you'll get some of those problems wrong, but you'll learn from that so that then when you encounter a situation in real life, you're prepared. So don't expect on the worksheets. In fact, in the back of each book, it gives the students answers to half of the problems, because the idea is they'll look at their answer there and they'll see, ooh, I got the wrong answer. Let me go retry this and see if I can't figure it out a different way. And so that's part of the learning process that's built into his curriculum. So don't freak out over that. It's just an adjustment, but it's a very important thing. I mean, you don't want your child, a lot of algebra books and a lot of geometry books, they just teach you very abstractly, and the students left not understanding why they're learning what they're learning. And Jacobs doesn't do that. He really shows you why you're learning what you're learning by putting you in these real life situations. At the same time, that does stretch your thinking a little bit, but it's worth it. And that would be my encouragement there. And know, too, that those books were originally written for schools. So there's extra problems. The author didn't know your child exactly many problems you would need. So feel free to not do every single problem, especially in those curriculum. There is more than most students need in that. So that would be a difference to be aware of. Jacobs also, again, he wrote it for schools, so he doesn't necessarily connect everything back to God all the time like the Principles of Mathematics curriculum does. But students coming from Principles of Mathematics should be able to see, oh yeah, we're exploring this part of God's creation. It's declaring God's praises, because he does really bring in that real life and hands-on approach to algebra and geometry, which is really, really rare. I really love that about his program, because most do not have that. And then they go the Jacobs program goes right into Principles of Algebra 2. And when I wrote that, I wrote it so anyone could come in from any Algebra 1 program, but really I knew people would be coming from elementary algebra. So I tried to make sure that transition would be nice and seamless. And the Principles of Consumer Math, that can be done at any point along high school. So if you're when it comes out, so if you're finishing Principles of Mathematics and you still feel like your child needs a year or two before they're ready to really start thinking through real life scenarios and that problem solving a little bit more, that would be a great choice to do that one first and then be ready for Jacobs next.
Okay. So Principles of Math, you wrote that one.
Yes.
And we're going to go from Principles of Math to Elementary Algebra, which is written by someone else.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So that explains why I'm so thankful that you were able to help the student and the teacher understand the transition, because you wrote one but you wrote it knowing what this other person had already done. So you could bring those two things together. That's wonderful. And then you also have, with Principles of Math, as well as Elementary Algebra and Geometry, those have courses at masterbooksacademy.com, right?
They do. And that would be a really easy way to keep a seamless teaching style throughout high school, because I'm the one who did the courses on the Academy for the Jacobs program. So when in those courses, I walk the student through it. I bring in the biblical worldview, point them back to the Lord and what they're learning. And so that can keep, and I also I have different schedules there for the students that specifically say which problems to solve and which ones not to, so that the student isn't having to solve them all, but the parent's not having to figure out, did I pick enough to cover the skills that we need to cover? So I have customized schedules there for that. And they also have access to me. So if they do get stumped, they can write me and get those questions answered, because the Jacobs program doesn't have as detailed of a solutions manual. So if there is something that you weren't able to figure out why it was wrong, like, you do have access to contact me with those courses. And within Principles of Mathematics, one of my goals is to help students see that all of math is proclaiming God's praises, and it's all a useful tool that we can use to serve him. And so it really gives a survey of high school math. So it gives a survey of how algebra and geometry and trigonometry are going to help us in different fields, so that when a student does enter high school math, they have that background and that biblical perspective. And Principles of Mathematics 1 also really looks at problem solving skills and breaks that down, like, okay, so how do we solve something if it's brand new and we've not seen this kind of situation before? What is the process to break that piece down? And so that is designed to prepare students for both real life and curriculum like Jacobs that will help them really stretch those problem solving skills further. But yeah, if you do the Academy, you'll have like that seamless, same teacher, so to speak, throughout the whole high school level.
I really like that we offer that extra instruction for the student. And by the way, that is a supplement to the curriculum. So you already have to have the curriculum from masterbooks.com. Then masterbooksacademy.com has the course, so that you can, at your pace, that your student is doing these math courses, they can have you as a teacher, as an instructor, to help them through that. And then also have you, like you said, be able to email you if they need to and have questions. So that really helps a lot of parents who might be a little nervous about upper level math and teaching it, to have you there to help the teacher as well as the student.
Yeah, and I would encourage parents who are nervous about upper level that your child's getting to that point where they can own their own education. I remember I was homeschooled, and in high school, my mom was able to actually be a lot more hands-off because she taught us how to learn earlier on. And so we were able to go beyond what she necessarily knew in some things, just because we had learned that ability to learn. And that's hopefully what Principles of Mathematics gives the student to start with, is like, how do I learn about math? And then they can go forward and do that. The e-courses will help and give them that guidance, but don't expect as a parent to have to be sitting down with them every second through that necessarily.
Right.
Hopefully they would be able to own some more of that. And there's differences. Math isn't everybody's strength. So there may be students who need more of that hand-holding. But that's where the academy comes in. So high school doesn't have to be fearful, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is that it can be a fun exploration, especially if we remember the purpose. The purpose is beyond just the academics. It's knowing the Lord and seeing him in action and depending on him. And that's the opportunity that we have within math too, is to see God's handiwork, to see how math really does describe his creation. And as students get that, it makes the mechanics of it a little bit easier because there's a purpose to it. Whereas if you're just learning algebra and geometry with no purpose, it's like this meaningless exercise that's a lot harder to wrap your mind around. But keep that as the focus and the priority, because that's what ultimately really matters. I mean, your child's probably not going to remember every little detail about geometry or algebra when they get later. But if they understand the core concepts and they understand the big picture, that's going to serve them really well.
Great. And I wanted to also mention that at masterbooksacademy.com, you can do free previews of each course so that you can understand better how this is going to work for you and your student. So we want to recommend that you try those out. Okay, so we definitely, with this Recipe for Homeschool Success Summit, we're trying to offer tips, remove all the friction points. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about ways that the parents, and we did mention Masterbooks Academy, so that's definitely one, but ways the parent teacher can have like some more tools in their belt, or have some strategy or any kind of wisdom you have for them.
I think my biggest one would just be to take a deep breath, and it's going to be okay. Don't panic. Again, like I said earlier, if a problem gets wrong, it doesn't mean your child didn't learn. It doesn't mean they're going to fail. It just means it's part of the learning process. And the more you can be okay with that, then you can help them be okay with that and help them understand that, this is exercising new parts of our brain. This is really teaching us very important skills, but ones that are newer. And so we're going to have to be patient with ourselves through this, and know that there are resources like the Academy. If you're struggling, sign up for that. You have access to email me. We'll work it through and get through this. But make it a journey of joy, of exploration together. Like you're getting to see, as you go through these high school courses, you're going to be able to see how math really does describe God's creation in brand new ways. And it's fascinating if you look at it from that perspective and don't just look at it from, I got to check the box for math for today. But if you're looking to see how does math really describe God's creation, and then as your brain goes, wow, this is a lot to keep track of, turn it upwards. Remind your child, hey, there's a lot to God's creation. And the reason we have to have these different rules and different techniques and different branches of math is because God made a complicated world. He is an amazing God. We need all of this to just begin to describe what he spoke into existence. He's big, he's powerful, and he's big enough and powerful enough to help us through this lesson and to help us learn this. And don't be afraid to encourage them to pray and to pray with them for that wisdom and for that strength to get through that.
Right. I feel like the way Master Books makes sure the student sees God in every subject is preparing them to live an adult life of wonder, because there will be struggles, there will be heaviness, there will be hard times, but their brains are being trained to just look at God and marvel that if God created something that this math concept explains, then how much more, like the Bible says, his thoughts are way higher than our thoughts. How much more wonderful is he than I can imagine?
Yes. And the Academy, if you get the Academy, that will be constantly reminding you of that, because that's my heart, is to really make sure that the child doesn't lose sight of that.
Good. So any tips, tools, success paths for the student you want to share?
It's kind of the same thing, to just remember that this is this is stretching your brain in a new way, but there's a purpose to it. You want to be able to see God's handiwork in creation, right? And to be able to do that, you have to stretch your brain a little bit, and to be able to be prepared to use math in your own life, you've got to be able to stretch your brain. Walter W. Sawyer calls math like a chest of tools. And I really like that illustration, because when you think about it, tools come in different shapes and sizes. So you have like simple screwdrivers, and you've got higher powered routers and tools that do specific things, right? And those higher powered tools require a little bit more training to understand and to be able to use effectively. But they do a really cool thing, and it may be more specialized than like a screwdriver you can use in 100 different situations, right? And you're going to learn it early on, and so that's more like your elementary math. It's simple. It's like a screwdriver. You use it all the time. As you get into high school, you're getting into more of the specialized tools that you may not use every single day of your life, but they are really powerful in helping us explore aspects of God's creation. And so as you learn those tools, it's going to take a little bit more time and effort to get your mind around it, but you're going to see how that really does help us in real life situations, serve the Lord, and help us uncover pieces of his creation and how he's designed things. So kind of just keep that in mind. Whatever's coming at you, go, okay, where's the tool? How does this really help me describe God's creation? I'm able to do that because God made me in his image. This is a privilege that we have to learn about what he's made, and keep that perspective as you're going through it. And if you're starting to feel overwhelmed and going, I don't understand this, stop and go, wow, all right, God, you made an incredible world. Help me to see what's going on here, and point your eyes back to him, and know that he has all wisdom. He's the one who spoke this into existence. He can help you. He can give you the wisdom that you need. But keep your eyes on him, and keep that perspective of why you're learning what you're learning, because I think that makes it a lot more meaningful and will help you get through the details of it.
Right. I love that you are helping the student and the parent or teacher really think about the fact that this is new and your brain has to adjust to new. You are creating new neural pathways. You are stretching. This takes time, just like it took time to learn to ride a bike or learn to read. So to be gentle with yourself and not expect perfection immediately. You may be smarter or faster at math than other people. It just may take some people longer. Don't worry about that. You are a unique human. I made you unique. You are an earthen vessel, like the Bible says, like a clay pot, and he, by his spirit, fills you with his wisdom, and all you have to do is acknowledge that he has it for you and will give it to you, and watch what he does in your weakness. His strength is present and strong if you invite him in. So I love that we can do math and depend on God at the same time.
And a couple other thoughts too is learn to take good notes. As you get into upper level math, this will serve you well in other subjects too, but learn to take good notes. In the academy, especially like for geometry, I walk students through that note-taking process because it's really important to keep track of the different theorems and postulates that they'll be learning. So figure out what system works for you. Some people might want index cards, some might want a notebook, some might use an online system, but figure out how your brain remembers information, and really make sure as you go through this that you are keeping notes, and don't be afraid to look back in the books. They all have, table of contents. You can go back and figure out where you need to go. If you're stuck later on in the course, it's probably because you missed something earlier on or forgot something earlier on. So you'll want to just not be afraid to look back at notes or look back in the textbook itself to kind of figure out what am I missing here as I go later on, because everything is very, very cumulative. And that goes to, if you're in algebra, the elementary algebra, and you're struggling with something and it's related to, well, whatever it's related to, go back and look at it with real numbers. Because as you start working with letters, those letters are representing unknown quantities. But we're really using the same principles that we did with known quantities. We're just applying them now to new situations, which helps us describe things like the law of gravity that hold true in multiple situations. But we can use letters to describe that relationship that's going to be the same in each of those situations. So that's why algebra is so powerful, is because it helps us describe those real life consistencies God holds in place. But if you're struggling with how to manipulate the letters, go back and look at how would I do it with actual values, because it's the same principles. We're just abstracting it so that we can apply it to multiple situations. So if as you're going through it, don't be afraid to look back at your previous book at Principles of Mathematics, or whatever you used before, to kind of see doing it with the actual numbers, because that can help. So note taking and not being afraid to look back are two other ways that can really, help you as you're trying to move forward with that. And I would say as you pick which one you're going to start with, I think typically algebra 1 or the elementary algebra would be like the first choice, just because geometry requires a little bit more of that brain stretching. So it might be better to kind of start that with the algebra, unless you can tell that your child is just not ready for the abstract, in which case geometry is more concrete, but just be aware that it's going to stretch that brain a little bit more.
Okay. Well, I'm so excited for the fact that the people listening to this, watching this, they've chosen homeschool, and that they can teach to their unique, fearfully, wonderfully made child and or student, and help them where they are progress to where they're going without the pressure of other people around being able to do it faster or slower, or there's no comparison. It's just you and your parent teacher working through this at the pace that works for your brain, and with all the help that you can have through masterbooksacademy.com and access to Kate. I'm just very excited for these families, because I know that was a thing for me in school. Some people were great at it, others weren't. Some people were so intimidated. And even in college, I can remember an adult student, somebody who had come back to college, just being so upset because he didn't understand the math that I thought he was going to have a stroke. His face was just so red because it just didn't make sense to him. So I really want to thank you, Kate, and the other people who've written the curriculums, that these students are learning and creating freedom in their minds to live in wonder of God, and to have these new pathways created in their minds to really enjoy math and enjoy learning and not have to stress so much.
Yes. And, I think that's really key. And especially as you go through like elementary algebra, know that we're going to review it in Principles of Algebra 2. So it's not the end of the world if you don't finish the last chapter. It's not the end of the world if something's still a little bit rusty. We're going to go back over it. They're going to get it. What matters most is to be enjoying that learning process and seeing the Lord along the way.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for your expertise, for your heart for God, your heart for homeschoolers, and for being a part of Masterbooks Recipe for Homeschool Success Summit.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And thank you all for being here and listening. We will see you back at the next talk.